Hello everybody and welcome back. Previously we saw in chapter 10 in the book of Yehoshua the battle of the southern section of the land of Eretz Yisrael. It was a speedy battle and it took place in a matter of a few days. That might be comparable to what we've seen in our days during the 6-Day War, when 7 countries came to fight against the Jewish state. And in a matter of a few days, Israel was not only able to defend itself, but also to conquer and to liberate many of the territories that was promised to us. Here too, in the southern section, took place very, very quickly. The kings came against the Jewish people, and they were defeated and utterly destroyed. Upon hearing about this tremendous, quick victory, lightning victory, the chapter in chapter 11 opens up and tells us that the king of Yavin of Chatzor in the northern section of the land of Eretz Yisrael hears about this and immediately gathers the kings in his area, and they gather a tremendous force of soldiers, artillery, chariots, and they come to fight against Yehoshua and the Jewish people. Now it could be that this chapter opens up right after the warfare in the southern area in Eretz Yisrael, because maybe that was his battle plan over here, not to give the Jewish people rest. But as soon as we got back to Gilgal after this campaign, he probably thought, hey, the Jews are tired. What I will do over here is I will gather a bigger force against the Jewish people, and this way we will be victorious against them. So they came and they went out in all the hosts, many people as the sands of the seashore, in multitudes, with horses and with chariots. They thought that the 5 kings were vanished because they had insignificant numbers of soldiers. Therefore they gathered a tremendous army as the grain of sands. Obviously this is not to be taken literally, but it means a tremendous amount of armies that it was you couldn't even read the amount of forces that were coming up. And they met together and they came to the waters of Meron to fight with Israel. And now here God comes to Yehoshua and tells him not to be afraid of them, even though they are a mighty host. Do not be afraid of these people. And we've seen before in the first few chapters that Yehoshua had to be strengthened time and time again. Here too, maybe Yehoshua thought that maybe someone had committed a sin or any other type of problem that might have arisen, as we've seen in the Battle of Ai, when Achan had sinned, and that caused the downfall of the Jewish people. So maybe he was concerned about that might happen again. So God comes to strengthen him and tells him not to be afraid of these numbers, because he will deliver them and kill them before the Jewish people. Now, Yehoshua comes with all the people with him into the area, and the Lord does deliver them into the hand of into the hands of the Jewish people, and they are totally wiped out. Not one is remaining. The commentaries tell us that there is an obligation over here for them also to destroy or to maim the horses, so they could not be used in warfare again against the Jewish people. Now, the Torah itself gives an obligation upon a king in Israel. 3 things he's forbidden to do. One is to gather much gold and silver, and that was obviously not so he shouldn't feel that he's the top man, and with all this money he could do whatever he wants. He was forbidden to have to gather too many wives, and also horses, so they shouldn't come to rely on their might, but rather always rely on God as their deliverance. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't go out to do battle, obviously, but what it does mean is that you go out with what you have and you try to do what's proper and the most that you could do, and know that your victory comes from above, from the Ribono Shel Olam, the master of this world. Being that horses were particularly used in warfare, they had to be also maimed and put out of use, so they could not be used once again in the battlefield. So Yehoshua did as the Lord had spoken to him, and he crippled the horses and burnt their chariots with fire. And he smote all the souls that were in them by the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. Now, we see time and time again throughout the last chapters that this is one of the things that the Jewish people did whenever they came to a complete area. They wiped out that total area, destroying everybody and killing everybody. And the text over here tells us in the 12th sentence, as Moshe, the servant of God, had commanded them, that they must totally wipe out the inhabitants of the land of Eretz Yisroel. The Midrash teaches us, in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, that in 3 places the nations of the world will assemble to do war against the children of Jacob. But the Holy One, blessed be He, will not let them do that. The first place was in the time of Jacob, with the story of Shechem, where Shimon and Levi went out and killed the inhabitants of Shechem. It says over there in the Torah that there was a fear inspired by God upon the nations around that area, and they did not chase the children of Jacob. The second time we also see later on, we'll see it in Yonatan with the son of Shaul, that they also had a fear upon them, upon the nations, and did not run after the Jewish people. Here too, in the days of Yoshua, they attempted to pursue the Holy One, blessed be He. Now, it's an unbelievable concept over here that the Midrash is telling us. It's not that they tried to pursue the Jewish people, but they actually tried to pursue the Holy One, blessed be He. God Himself is the main goal for these nations over here, for these people, in order to come and to destroy Him. So be it, if they could. But He did not let them gather. And where did they come together? That was in Chatzor, with this particular battle of the northern section of Eretz Yisrael. God did not let them be victorious upon the Jewish people, and He came to save them. The Midrash continues and tells us, Rabbi Eliezer says, because there was a tradition to burn Chatzor, this was the meeting place of all these kings, so the city itself was burnt, as opposed to the other cities which were captured. They were not burnt, but the spoils of war were taken by the Jewish people. A good day all around, I would say that. All the cities that stood in the strength Israel burnt, none of them except for Chatzor itself, as I had mentioned. But all the soils they did take for war. As the Lord commanded Moshe his servant, so did Moshe command Yoshua. And he said he left nothing undone. That was all that was commanded by God. Yoshua cleaned house and did exactly what he was supposed to do. Now it seems, and Rashi brings this down in other commentaries, that this is a overly, or seemingly overly, cruelty on behalf of Yoshua and the Jewish people over here. But in reality, we have to remember that this is a fulfillment of a divine commandment, lo techia kol neshama, not to let any of these 7 nations live. And here the text, the Talmud goes on to teach us over here that one might think that this is totally cruel. Wasn't enough just to be victorious in the war. Why must he put to death these people over here? A bat call, a voice came out from heaven. Do not be overly righteous. Do not have more compassion than the Holy One, blessed be He. For if God Himself told us to come and to destroy these people, that should be enough for us, because it's a divine commandment for us to go out and fulfill God's word. We find later on when the Jewish people, the heart, took over and said, why should we kill everybody? And this took place, of course, in the time of Shaul, as we will learn a little bit later on. Shaul was given the commandment to wipe out Amalek. And Shaul said, well, if the men sinned, well, what about the children? What about the women? Why should I put them to death? What about the cattle? Why should I put them to death? And the voice came out from heaven and said, don't be overly righteous. Don't be more righteous than your Creator. Meaning that God knows the hearts of man. God knows what's best for this world. Evil must be removed from this world. That's the bottom line over here. You can't just keep it and put it in a box. Evil must be removed. And this is the command that was given over to the Jewish people. Unfortunately, Shaul did not listen to this command, and he kept alive the cattle of Amalek and the king of Amalek, and for that he was punished, and that was the rise of Haman in future generations, that the seed of Amalek continued and was not wiped out when it should have been. And this was a compassion of Shaul that led to the story that would take place and the endangerment of the Jewish people down the road in the story of Purim. So Yeshua took all the lands and the hills and the southern country and all the lands of Goshen and the valleys and the plains. And Yeshua made war a long time with these kings. Sentence 18 over here, as we are in chapter 11. Now Rashi points out that Yeshua made war for a long time with all of these kings, in contrast to what we saw earlier, or the previous chapter, in chapter 10, where in the southern area of Eretz Israel, he was able to quickly wipe out those kings that were over there and to conquer their territories. Here in the northern side, the text tells us that Yeshua made war during a long period of time. So this is obviously a process that took many years to go over, because we know in the southern area the campaign took only a few days. Here, though, it's being drawn out in the northern section, and it was obvious that we know that the wars of conquest of Eretz Israel took 7 years. So this was over a period of a few years that it took time. Rashi points out to us something very interesting and tells us that this is a rebuke to Yeshua, for he intentionally did this delay to conquer the land of Eretz Israel in order to lengthen his own lifespan. Now, what does that mean over here? The idea is that Yeshua was given a mission to conquer the land of Eretz Israel and divide it amongst the tribes. This is his mission in life. As soon as he finishes and completes what he was supposed to do in this world, there's no reason for Yeshua to stay on, and it would pass on to the next generation. Yeshua's life, he would have completed what he was supposed to do in this world, and his goal has been reached. And from this point on, Yeshua would pass on. So Yeshua knew that his life was dependent upon conquering the land of Eretz Israel and dividing it amongst the tribes. So what he tried to do is to extend this program over here of conquering the land of Eretz Israel. In this way, he thought he could actually extend his life. Now we find also by his teacher Moshe Rabbeinu that he was also given a command to fight against the Midyanim. God told him over there, revenge the blood of the Jewish people on the Midyanim. And afterwards, Vasafta Lamecha, afterwards you will go up to your people. Meaning he knew that his life was dependent, Moshe Rabbeinu, upon the victory against Midian. Now one may think that Moshe Rabbeinu over here would also try to extend this campaign, this military campaign. He'd gather men, and everything would look, according to the books, that this would be fine, because you have to train the troops and you have to wait for the appropriate season to battle. And he could this way extend this campaign, and also to extend his own life, because he knew that as soon as he finished taking revenge against Midian, his life would be over. But Moshe Rabbeinu does not do that. Immediately upon hearing the command, he knew the importance of going out to avenge the blood of the Jewish people. He knew that God's name was connected to this, so he didn't delay even for one moment, but immediately gathered his troops and went out to fight against Midian, regardless of the fact that his own personal life would be taken after that. Here Yeshua does the opposite. Yeshua knew that his life was dependent upon conquest of Eretz Israel. So what he did is he tried to extend this conquest, this battle over here, in order for him to extend his land. And here's the interesting point, my dear friends. The interesting point is that Moshe Rabbeinu lived to 120 years, and he lived his full life regardless of the fact that he did God's will right away. Yeshua, on the other hand, should also have lived to 120, but we find out that he only lived to 110 years, meaning his life was shortened. The exact opposite of what he tried to do for himself. He tried to extend his life by keeping the wars going and to extend the wars. And the exact opposite, God paid him back measure for measure, saying, you try to extend your life by dragging your feet with these battles over here, your life will be shortened. The exact opposite of what you tried to do. So if you have a goal in your life, and you should go for it and do what you have to do, regardless of any personal requests or obligations which will befall you. And that's an interesting thing that we find out about that. The text continues to tell us that the Lord hardened the hearts that they should come together against the battles of Israel. This is something similar to what we find by Paro. Paro also God hardened his hearts in order for his signs and his wonders to be made great, meaning the Rambam comes to teach us over here that a person sins to such a hard degree that part of his punishment is that his free will is now taken away from him, as it was in the case of Paro, and his free will was taken away in order to have his complete downfall, as we saw with the Egyptians over there. Here too, God hardened the hearts of these nations that they should come and fight against the Jewish people in order for them to be utterly destroyed, that there should be no hope for these people and no way for them to repent and to come back, because they were so immersed in their evil and their idolatry that they had to be destroyed and removed from this world. And at that time, Yeshua came and cut off from the mountains, from Hebron, and the other people in the mountain, and Yeshua completely destroyed all of their cities, and he left none of them alive, and he took their whole land according to all that the Lord had spoken to Moshe. Yeshua gave to inheritance to Israel according to the divisions of the tribes, and the land rested from war. This is interesting over here, that the land rested. Now we know that Yeshua did not complete the task. He did not wipe out, and he left pockets of the people, of the inhabitants of the 7 nations over here. The commentaries come to teach us over here that there was a sort of some type of peaceful coexistence between Israel and the Canaanite people that lived over there. Meaning they saw the might of Yeshua and the victories of town and city after city. So they were afraid to come out and to attack. But unfortunately, the Jewish people didn't clean house, and they left these pockets of people amongst the Jewish people. They would later on, years later, gather strength and raise their ugly head against the Jewish people and cause us many, many hardships. And this was all, of course, predicted in the Torah. When the Torah commanded us to wipe out these people, it meant that they shouldn't be around whatsoever. So we could erase evil from this world and build a perfect society, a Jewish society led by Torah law and the way that it should be over here. But here, unfortunately, they did not clean house, and they left pockets of the 7 nations amongst them, and this, of course, would later on cause tremendous hardships for the Jewish people. As the text later on tells us that Yeshua was old, but there was still much land left to possess, and that, of course, is attributed to Yeshua, that he did not really fulfill his obligation and what was commanded upon him. That's just the way it was, and we should learn from the history of history, the lesson of history, of course, and understand that this also is relevant to us today here in Eretz Yisrael. In any case, the land rested from war, from the 2 campaigns, from the southern campaign and the northern campaign. We will pick this up next time right here on the Rayon HaYehudi Torah Station. I'm Levi Chazan, and I thank you for being with us once again. Until next time.